Alone in Daggerlin, the sinister truth of the last cop's haunting descent into cursed shadows twilight draped itself over Daggerlin like a shroud, turning the quiet suburb into a gloomy stage set for a horror show. A dead silence blanketed the homes, the chirping of crickets sounding more like a funeral dirge than the soothing backdrop it usually gave. Mark Turner stepped outside, the frigid air biting at his skin. He stood on the threshold of his lonely existence, a mere ghost in the community he once protected. The whispers of corruption clung to him, shadows of a scandal that cost him everything. His phone buzzed, breaking the eerie quiet with the sharpness of a gunshot. The voice on the other end was frantic, the Johnsons his closest neighbors. They spoke of dark figures flitting through their yard, shapes that melted into shadows whenever approached. Skepticism wrestled with an old instinct, the need to protect. Wrapping his fingers around the cold metal of his flashlight, Mark propelled himself into the pitch blackness outside, heart pounding like a drum against the icy dread spreading through his veins. The streetlights flickered as he walked, casting long, crooked shadows that twisted around him like fingers, urging him to retreat. He remembered patrolling these very streets, the laughter of children echoing as brightly as the sirens he controlled. But that's all gone now. As he reached the Johnsons' home, the porch light sputtered like a dying star, its weak glow revealing a sinister hole where joy used to thrive. Knocking on the door unleashed a low groan, the sound of ancient wood weathered by years of neglect. Mirroring his own weary spirit, silence swallowed him whole. Felt wrong. He turned to the Johnsons, who stood huddled near the window, eyes wide in fear. Their next words chilled him. The local kids, they whispered with growing panic, gone, vanished. The police dismissed their fears, but Mark's blood boiled. It was a familiar rage, ignited by years of trust trampled underfoot. With stalwart resolve, he swore to uncover the truth behind these shadows that had transformed his cherished town into a waking nightmare. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night thickened around him, Mark felt the shadows close in. Each rustling leaf whispered secrets he was terrified to uncover. The Johnsons recounted sighting these wraiths, haunting the edges of the woods nearby, hungry eyes lurking, waiting. Mark's heart raced, not just from fear but from the raw ache of purpose stirring deep within him, a call to action. No longer the disgraced cop. He could be the guardian they needed once more. Yet now, he faced a far deeper horror than the first soft strains of panic he felt. The once familiar streets shifted like an untrustworthy companion, the warmth of his memories tainted with dread. As he stood at the Johnsons' door, the darkness pushed against him, demanding he turn back. But there was no going back. This was Daggerlin, where shadows danced deceivingly in the night, and he had to find out what, or who, stalked them lest he himself become one of the lost. As he stepped back into the night, the final chilling question echoed in his mind. How could he protect the community from the very darkness threatening to consume it when the weight of their distrust hung heavier than the shadows around him? Mark felt the weight of the darkness enfolding him, squeezing tighter with every step away from the Johnsons' house. The night had transformed, each shadow warping into grotesque shapes that danced in his peripheral vision, teasing his sanity. He could hear the quiet rustle of the wind, but beneath it lay a sinister whisper, weaving tales of hysteria, the missing children, the lurking wraiths, and an ever-deepening mystery. Determined to chase the shadows away with an ounce of courage, he headed towards the woods, then drew back, sensing the cold breath of something ancient beckoning him. Memories of his days in uniform flooded through him. He had once walked these paths, a guardian of peace. How ironic that the very fabric of safety now felt completely threadbare, fraying at the edges, and unraveling into dread. He remembered the legend's parents whispered to frighten disobedient children, a phantom who prowled the woods, lured innocent kids with the promise of adventure before dragging them into the unknown. As he glimpsed the boundary of sprawling trees ahead, an icy dread washed over him. Were parents' stories now a grim reality? The flashlight beam trembled in his hand. It felt like a flimsy barrier against an ocean of darkness. He marched forward, hesitant but resolute, and as the beam danced across twisted trunks, something jerked in his stomach. He saw it, a figure silhouetted against the shadows, standing still with its back turned to him. Hey! Yes, that was a voice. He raised his flashlight, its feeble glow piercing the darkness. The figure remained still, almost statue-like. But before he could step closer, it vanished, absorbed by the blackness like a drop of ink in water. Panic surged. He called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Just the wind teasing the treetops. Mark's heart fought valiantly against a tide of fear, pushing him to turn back. Yet he pressed on, questioning what unseen power held him captive. His breaths came in quick, shallow bursts. He gripped the flashlight like a lifeline, sweat trickling down his back as the woods consumed him. Without warning, a low, menacing growl splintered the air, echoing through the trees. Mark froze, the hairs on his neck standing tall. The sound was beyond animal, a threat that resonated in his bones. His instincts kicked in. He wasn't alone. The cacophony of rustling leaves erupted, the sound closing in from every direction. Mark's heart thudded, urging him to run. But rooted by disbelief, he stood like prey. What was stalking him? Eyes darting, he backed away slowly, pulse racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting perhaps from the very shadows he had sought to dispel. Then, in a barely audible whisper, a voice echoed, chilling him to the core. "Free us!" The despair dripped from the words, heavy like the fog that hung low in the trees. Were they the lost children? His stomach twisted, a rush of dread drowning his thoughts. What had happened to them? Just then, a flicker caught his eye, a glimpse of movement. There. Was it a child? No, the vision was fleeting, just a wraith darting from shadow to shadow. It reminded him of the desperate pleas from the Johnsons, eyes filled with dread. He needed to act, but how could he enter that realm of shadows without losing himself? He turned, ready to sprint back to the safety of streetlights, but the woods seemed to close in, an impenetrable barrier of darkness. There'd be no retreat now. He wouldn't give in though. Not when the truth lay somewhere among the shadows. With each thundering heartbeat, he called back into the depth, "I'm coming for you." Only silence answered, mocking him, thickening the air with despair. His flashlight sputtered ominously. It flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like mocking fiends, and there, just beyond the edge of light, he saw them, faces staring back, lost and pleading. Was he about to discover the sinister truth hidden in Daggerlin, or had he already sealed his fate in the cursed shadows? Mark recoiled, his throat tightening as the faces loomed in the dim light. Childlike yet twisted, their eyes shimmered with a longing that sent icy tendrils wrapping around his heart. Their mouths opened, but no sound emerged, only an echo of despair hung in the air. "Help us!" A tiny voice finally broke through the silence, clear yet muffled, like a plea buried under layers of soil. The words collided with his nerves, igniting a fire of determination within him. He took a step forward, the beam of his flashlight washing over the spectral forms. Their features were distorted, a haunting amalgamation of innocence and unearthly sorrow. I can't just leave you," Mark stammered, the weight of their pleading eyes anchoring him in place. The shadows conspired around him, writhing and shifting as though they were alive, craving to swallow him whole. But as he focused on the ghostly children, a flash of memory flickered in his mind, a faded photograph of the Johnsons, the missing children's faces etched on the edges. He was engulfed by a wave of guilt, the memory of their desperation surfacing like a dark tide. Maybe they weren't gone. Maybe they lingered here, trapped in these cursed woods. The growl returned, now louder, vibrating through his bones. He spun around, the flashlight beam quaking as he sought to identify the threat lurking behind him. There was movement, a shadow darting among the trees, tauntingly close, just out of sight. "Where are you?" he shouted, panic driving his voice higher. "Show yourself." No answer came, only the incessant rustling. He felt their presence, dark and heavy, wrapping around him like the mist. Mark realized he was losing control. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet where would he go? The haunting faces returned to his thoughts. They needed him. Taking a breath, he forced himself to be calm. "I'll find a way," he murmured, but the words felt frail, nearly swallowed by the encroaching shadows. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of something, a faint glow in the dark, oddly warm, radiating just beyond the next thicket. Could it be a way out, or something worse? His skin prickled as he shuffled toward it. Hope fluttered in his chest like a trapped bird, but the growl echoed again, deeper, closer, an unmistakable presence closing in. He stumbled, his foot catching on uneven ground, the beam of light almost darting from his grip. Please, the wails of the children morphed into a chorus of tortured cries. "Don't leave us." The world swirled around him as he fought to regain his footing, heartbeat loud against the shrieks. Darkness pulsed, a living entity yearning to swallow him. And Mark understood he was but a moment from becoming part of the shadows he feared forever. He thrust himself forward, towards the glow, racing against time and terror, every breath a desperate plea for escape. A branch snaked out, catching his arm, but he rolled, propelling himself into a clearing. What he found there made his blood run cold. A small campfire danced in the stillness, remnants of forgotten warmth encircled by scattered toys, each echoing laughter he never heard. Standing amidst it all was a figure shrouded in the fading light, a woman. Her hair tumbled like a cascading waterfall, and her eyes gleamed with an unholy light. "Welcome back, Officer Mark," she hissed, a smile curling on her lips. "We've been waiting for you." Mark's stomach dropped, realization crushing him. This was no way out. Had they lured him here? Were the stories true? And just as the shadows began to creep around him, he understood he hadn't been called to save them, he had been summoned to join them. "Free us," they begged again, and Mark felt their cold arms brushing against his thoughts, swallowing his resolve whole. He stood on the edge of a dreadful decision, to fight the growing darkness or to surrender to them. What awaited him in the depths of this terrible night, salvation or damnation? The answer lay in the shadows still lurking behind him. As dread wrapped its arms tighter around Mark, a single scream broke through the gloom, reverberating far and wide. "Help us." But who would save him? Mark's heart raced, a wild drum against the silence of the clearing. The woman's smile, both ethereal and menacing, pierced through the haze of panic. "You don't recognize me, do you?" she whispered, her voice low and sultry. She stepped closer, the firelight flickering off her face, revealing a beauty that was twisted like something forged in a nightmare. "Who are you?" Mark snapped, feigning bravado though his legs felt weak. He scanned the encroaching darkness, half expecting the shadows to materialize into something corporeal, something malevolent. Her laughter echoed, an unsettling sound that sent chills down his spine. "You really don't remember?" The eyes of the ghostly children watched with an intense focus, their silence amplifying the tension. "You thought you could save us, but we're already lost." He stumbled back, feet dragging through the damp, crisp leaves, feeling their icy whispers nipping at his heels. "Lost how?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "What happened to you?" With slow, deliberate movements, she gestured at the toys scattered around the fire, each one marked with the weight of a memory, of joy lost in tragedy. "We were trapped here just like you will be. The darkness binds us." Mark felt the air thicken, each breath becoming harder as the weight of realization pressed down on him. The Johnsons. Their disappearance had been shrouded in mystery, but the lost look in her eyes cast all doubt aside. "You were one of them," he choked out. "Yes," she cooed, the enchanting tone laced with bitterness. "And you thought you'd make a difference. But sinners do not save the lost. They become one of us." A primal emotion surged within him, pure terror. Was he staring into the depths of his own demise? Voices hummed in the air around him, growing more distinct, echoing the horrors of their fate. pressing against his mind. "Help us! Help us!" they begged, their whispers tugging at his consciousness like a noose tightening around his throat. As the glow of the campfire flickered, it illuminated the gnarled fingers of the shadows creeping closer, as if drawn to his fear. Mark's instincts screamed for him to run, yet he was anchored by the eyes of the woman, who now moved gracefully around the clearing, her arms extending as if to envelop him in a dark embrace. "Come closer, Mark," she beckoned softly. "Join us. You haven't even begun to understand what it means to be free." And then he saw it, a flash of light, not from the fire, but from a tarnished locket pinned upon her chest. A child's photo stared back at him, two laughing faces frozen in time. His mind raced, recognition hitting hard. It was them, the Johnsons. No one ever found them, and now they were captive in this hellish nightmare. "Stop lying," Mark roared, rage fueling him, forcing one foot in front of the other. "You're using them." With a swift motion, the locket snapped open, and shrill laughter erupted into the night. The shadows danced, contorting like dark phantoms under the light. "No, Mark," she said, her expression shifting to a sinister grin that widened like a growing chasm. "You're the one who is being used. Don't you see? Your power isn't in saving them. It's in joining the darkness. It's time to let go." An oppressive weight built in Mark's chest, a gnawing despair tying him to the ground. The children's cries flooded his ears, mixing with the echoes of their forgotten laughter. He felt his own resolve shattering, each fragment lost to the haunting chorus. Just as his vision blurred and shadowy hands reached for him, the night erupted. A sudden roar erupted from the woods. The growl he had heard before morphed into something much larger, something more insatiable. Branches whipped against the trees as a massive shape barreled toward him, unseen but tangible. "Help us!" the chorus cried one last time, almost in unison. But this time, it was as if something primal answered in the darkness. Mark took a halting step back as the shadows hesitated. His heart pounded against the mounting chaos. What emerged was not the dark he expected, but a flash of raw terror. What had come into the clearing, he could not tell. But as the ground shook beneath him, Mark realized he had a new decision: fight against the growing darkness, or succumb to the unseen force that was racing to his side. As he prepared to make his choice in that unholy battleground, a single thought screamed louder than the rest: could he still find a way to save the children, or was it already too late for them and for him? In that moment, Mark cursed the shadows beneath him. What had he truly uncovered, and at what cost? The fiery glow flickered behind him, illuminating the passing storm. But he knew he stood at the edge of something far worse than he could ever have imagined. The deafening growl echoed through the clearing, a brutal sound that shattered Mark's thoughts. The shadows momentarily froze, caught between fear and anticipation. He turned, eyes darting toward the oncoming chaos, and for a split second, he hoped it was a rescue, something that would cut through the smothering darkness. But no. From within the thicket, a hulking silhouette emerged, framed by the eerie glow of the fire. The shape was grotesque, a confusion of limbs that twisted unnaturally, a creature bent on reveling in the terror it inspired. As it lumbered closer, the air grew heavy with an acrid stench, a pungent mix of decay and something more primal. "Mark!" a voice rang out, breaking through the confusion. It was despair wrapped in urgency. It was the woman's voice, but twisted, echoing like a desperate plea. "You can't fight what you don't understand." He felt the warmth of dread coil around him. This was no ordinary nightmare. This was the embodiment of it, a nightmare made flesh. Mark swallowed hard, his throat dry, humanity battling against some deeper, instinctual fear. "Fight!" He forced himself to scream, though the word barely clung to reality. He could feel the pull of the shadows behind him, their whispers pressing against his skin like an oncoming tide. They wove tales of despair and despairing hope, weaving a web that threatened to ensnare him entirely. As the creature took another step forward, the ground beneath him erupted, a geyser of soil and roots spewing forth, its grip pulling at him like a rapacious hand. The woman's laughter rose anew, joining with the creature's growl created an unholy symphony that rang around him. Mark. She lunged forward, her fingertips brushing against his arm, sending a jolt of icy panic through him. You can save the children. You must embrace it. Accept the darkness. Only then will you find freedom. Her eyes glinted with that same twisted beauty, a mingling of madness and allure that captivated and repulsed him. Shut up, Mark shouted, wrenching himself free from her cold grasp, stomping down hard to break the spell. He refused to believe her words. He refused to let it end here. The shadows churned in anger, slithering close to his feet, eager to drag him down into whatever hell they inhabited. Across the clearing, the creature lunged, a horrific roar escaping its throat. Mark didn't even think. Adrenaline propelled him as he dashed to the side, the shadows and cries of the children clawing at him like a swarm of desperate vermin. The fire crackled behind him, its warmth fading, casting warped shadows across the ground. He could still hear the children's cries, mingling with the growl. They were lost, trapped by a horror Mark couldn't begin to comprehend. He stumbled and fell, hands scraping the ground, the cold earth biting into his palms. Help us, they whimpered, their voices echoing in his mind, pulling him toward guilt and instinctive rage. Wrong or right, he needed to fight. But how? Would strength or defiance save anyone? A sudden glow caught his eye. It radiated from the locket, lying discarded among the leaves. It pulsed like a heartbeat, weaving light in the suffocating darkness. It called to him, promising something, perhaps answers, perhaps salvation. As he scrambled toward it, the creature shifted, baring its jagged teeth in a predatory grin. The woman stood in the way now, eyes filled with malicious delight, waiting to ensnare him. Don't! She shrieked, voice a paradox of desperation and triumph. You'll regret this choice. Mark hesitated, heart racing. The whispers of the shadows curled around him. Did he want to embrace the darkness? Or could he pull the light from the depths? He lunged forward, grasping the locket, the creature lunging with terrifying speed. What would he unleash? As that question spiraled into the void, the shadows released a roar that fused with his fear. With time slipping through his fingers, Mark raced toward the truth lurking in the darkness, knowing full well that every choice could be his last. Mark's fingers closed around the locket, its smooth surface vibrating against his palm. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single object, the last remnant of hope in a sea of terror. The creature's growl thundered louder, shattering his momentary focus. It lunged, a mass of filth and fury. Go, just go, he shouted to himself, feeling panic bubble in his gut as he rolled to the side. He barely dodged the creature's snapping jaws, the putrid breath colliding with him like a wave of despair. Scrambling to his feet, he grasped the locket tighter. There was energy within it, he could feel it coursing through him, a heartbeat synchronized with his own. What did that mean? Could it save him? Would it outshine the shadow that had him cornered? The woman's laughter pierced through the night, hanging in the air like the scent of rotting leaves. It sent chills slicing down his spine. You'll see soon enough. The truth will always find you, Mark. He swirled around to face her. The shadows were wild, rippling at her feet, eager to spread their darkness. What the hell do you want from me? He shouted. The fear in his voice wavered as he forced himself to stand tall. To become one of us. She grinned, the madness teetering on the edge of her expression. The creature paused, drawn by her words, its grotesque form surging like a wave of darkness. Shadows spread at a terrifying speed across the ground, twisting and writhing, hungry for his surrender. Mark looked at the locket, feeling its warmth turn to heat. This is my choice, he whispered, steeling himself against the tide of dread. The light grew, a fierce beacon slicing through the gloom. With a burst of courage, he thrust the locket toward the creature and shouted, "Get away from me!" The light surged forward. The shadows screamed a sound that ripped through the very fabric of the night. The creature recoiled, shrieking in agony, the primal groan piercing the atmosphere. The woman's eyes widened, shifting from delight to terror as the shadows continued to churn. Mark stepped forward, every ounce of fear churning into a raw determination fueled by the children's cries. Yet what had he unleashed? The moment hung precariously in the air, the creature scrambling backward, desperate to escape the blinding light. But then, a flicker of shadow seeped from the corners of the clearing. A second, and another, until shapes began to emerge, smaller, more elusive, but undeniably creatures of the darkness, each more sinister than the last. Wisps of despair floated from them like lost souls, swirling in a dark ballet. "No! Stay back!" Mark shouted, heart racing even faster as they lunged forward, drawn by the light but held back by the darkness they craved. "Embrace it, let it in," the woman urged, her voice echoing around him like a siren's call. "You can't escape what's already within." His resolve wavered. Fear clawed at his mind, fighting against the pulse of the light. "No!" Mark screamed, pushing the locket further in front of him as if it could protect him. But he felt it slipping, the shadows surging with a furious hunger. He hurled the locket back into the depths of the darkness, a last-ditch effort to sever the connection. Would that save him or damn him? In that moment of uncertainty, time froze. The light collided against the encroaching shadows, creating a swirling vortex that filled the clearing with cacophony screams, roars, and eerie whispers, all converged into a symphony of chaos. Mark could barely breathe, eyes wide as the ground trembled beneath him. What had he done? As the shadows began to recoil, forming into a monstrous wave, he felt a powerful surge beneath his feet, and with it, a realization he was shackled by his own choices. Now he had to confront them. The darkness roared one final time, threatening to consume him entirely. And in that heartbeat, Mark knew this would not end here, not until he faced the truth of what lingered beneath the surface. Would the remnants of hope guide him, or would he plunge into an abyss from which there was no return? The shadows closed in, whispering secrets of the past and beckoning him toward a fate he could hardly comprehend. Mark stumbled back as the vortex of sound and darkness exploded around him, a cyclone of terror that seemed eager to swallow him whole. The shadows shrieked and howled like a chorus of lost souls, each voice more chilling than the last. His heart pounded, every beat an echo of impending doom. The ground beneath him shifted, bubbling and gurgling, as if the earth itself was alive and angry. He fought against the panic rising in his throat. He dug his fingernails into his palms, grounding himself in the searing pain. No, he willed himself. "I can't lose it now." With desperate determination, Mark turned to face the creature that still loomed behind him. The light from the locket flickered, casting wild shapes over the ground. Just shadows, just shadows. He glanced back at the woman, her laughter still ringing in his ears, taunting him. She danced on the edge of the darkness, hovering just beyond reach. "You can't fight it," she shouted, her voice swirling around him like smoke. Mark clenched his fists, feeling the intensity of the locket's energy in his veins. Focus. This was for the children. This was for every shattered life that had fallen prey to the dark whispers that clung to Daggerlin. But as he steadied himself, the smaller shadows lashed out, darting through the air, reaching for him with clawed hands made of darkness. He ducked just in time, the air slicing past his face. They were relentless, a swarm of hunger and despair. "Stop," he bellowed, the force of his voice surprising even him. "You don't own me." The shadows paused, for just a heartbeat. In that moment, the energy from the locket pulsed. A bright flash burst forth, illuminating the clearing with a blinding white light that pushed against the encroaching darkness. Mark gasped. The light felt warm, consuming, like an embrace he didn't know he needed. "I can beat you," he shouted, gripping the locket like a lifeline. But as soon as he thought he had a moment of reprieve, the wall of shadows surged forward, spilling over each other, clawing to escape the light. They merged together, twisting and morphing, and in the heart of that seething mass, he spotted glimmers of terrified faces. Faces of the children. "No!" Mark cried out as reality settled in. They were trapped, helpless. "I won't leave you." He threw himself towards the center of the chaos, drawn by the cries that crescendoed like a symphony of despair. The locket's warmth flooded his senses, urging him on. He had to find a way to break through, to rescue them, to bring them back from the edge of despair. The woman's laughter erupted again. You think you can save them? They are ours now. They chose the darkness. Her eyes glinted with a sinister light, reflecting shadows that danced like flames. Mark felt his heart drop. No, that can't be true. Desperation gnawed at him, feeding the fear that gripped his gut like a vice. With no other option, he pressed through the horde of swirling shadows. As his body collided with the chaos, the screams reached a deafening peak, each one a knife twisting deeper into his soul. He could barely breathe. Suddenly, he erupted through the shadows, landing on softened ground, breathless and trembling. Around him, the glowing energy from the locket formed a protective dome, pushing back against the darkness, revealing the faces of the lost children. Hope shimmered in their despairing eyes, and Mark's resolve solidified. He reached out, ready to pull them into the safe light. But just as he moved, the woman emerged, baring her teeth. You can't save them, Mark. They belong to the night now. Mark faltered, the weight of her words settling heavily in his chest. He turned to the children, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. What choice could he possibly make? He felt the darkness snap at his heels, eager to drag him back into its depths. Mark's breath quickened as he realized what lingered at stake. Would he risk his own soul for those he barely knew? Make your choice, the woman screamed, her voice a haunting echo. With time slipping away and shadows clawing at his resolve, he grasped the locket tighter, feeling its power surge within him again. But the swirling abyss to his back threatened to swallow him whole once more, and as he turned to face the children again, a chilling thought struck him. If he could fight the darkness, would it come at a cost greater than he could bear? In that moment he stood at the edge of fate. Would his choice bring salvation or doom? The shadows lunged, the decision looming over him like a dark cloud, as chaos once again threatened to consume all light. Mark's heart raced like a train on a broken track. The woman's laughter echoed, ringing in his ears like an alarm. He was caught in a nightmare, struggling to remember the path he had chosen. With the shadows pressing in, his resolve flickered like a dying flame. Hold on, he shouted, voice cracking. The children's faces blurred before him, painted with fear and longing. They reached out, their tiny hands searching for salvation, yet shadows curled around them like hungry snakes. The locket pulsed fiercely, bathing the clearing in a fierce glow that repelled the dark. But the light flickered, desperate against the onslaught. Mark had to act. He couldn't let the darkness claim them. Stay close, he called, bracing himself against the ripple of terror that cracked the ground beneath them. I'll get you out. He took a step forward, and a scream tore through him, an agonizing cry that felt like it was woven into the fabric of the night. Each spirit trapped within the shadows begged to be freed, their pain wrapping around his chest like a noose. Mark, one child's whisper cut through the chaos, trembling and familiar. His sister, Emily. He strained to see her amid the swirling abyss, a fleeting vision before it twisted away, lost in darkness. Emmy? Panic surged through him, an electric jolt. He pushed harder against the tide of shadows, stumbling but unwilling to yield. I'm coming. The woman laughed again, almost sweetly, spinning closer on the edge of perception. You think you can break the bond between them and the dark? They are drawn to it just as you are. It's in your blood. Fear gripped Mark's throat. No, I want let it take me too. He remembered the stories, how the whispers from the well had called to generations. He felt their seductive pull, a thick fog wrapping around his mind, trying to pull him down. Yet Emily's pale face appeared again, and he lunged. The shadows recoiled, a sharp hiss of sound, a flash of desperation in their movements. He had to reach her. He could almost grasp her hand. Mark. She stretched toward him, her face a mask of fear. Help us. But just as he was about to cross the distance, the shadows surged with a furious whirlwind. They twisted together, forming a monstrous visage, grotesque and terrifying, a ghoul that screamed his name. 1,000 lost souls merged into one chilling entity. Yield! It roared, dark tendrils reaching for him. They wrapped around his ankles, pulling him down. Join us or be consumed. Mark's breath quickened, the weight of despair heavy on him. The voices clamored, drowning his thoughts, threatening to drag him into that void. He fought against the darkness, swallowing his resolve. But then he remembered the locket, a beacon of hope amidst the storm. He held it high as it pulsed with renewed vigor, the warm luminescence pushing back. I refuse, he roared, thrusting it forward like a sword. Light erupted from the locket, cutting through the shadows. They hissed, recoiling, but the monstrous face only grew more furious. You are a fool, it shrieked, its wide mouth stretching impossibly large. They belong to me now. Suddenly, he felt the earth quake beneath him, as if the very foundation of Daggerlin was shaking under the weight of the terror unleashed. An icy chill crept up his spine, an omen that made his blood run cold. The children's cries melded with the cacophony of howling shadows, their voices desperate yet laden with sorrow. Mark, eyes wide and mind racing, felt the truth settle like lead in his gut. This was a fight not just for their lives, but for his very soul. As the light pushed out further, the shadows began to pull away, but darkness still clawed at him, hungry, relentless. Would he save them all, or would he fall prey to the darkness that sought him? The abyss beckoned, and chaos surged within him as his next move hung precariously in the balance. Just as he thought he might reach them, the woman screamed, "You will pay for this, Mark!" The ground beneath him cracked open, revealing a black pit that seemed to breathe, rising and falling like a living creature. With the shadows howling around him, the choice before Mark crystallized. A decision that could shatter everything. What price would he have to pay to save the children? The darkness lunged again, insatiable and wild, as Mark felt himself teeter on the brink. And then it hit him: there was no way out without risk. Could he truly turn his back on the fear that beckoned him, or would he fall into the void, dragged down by the very shadows he sought to destroy? The final question hung in the air, heavy as stone, the shadows moving eagerly toward their prize as Mark stood at the precipice of fate. He had to decide this instant before it was too late. Mark felt the ground rumble like it was alive, the pit beneath him yawning wider, inviting him into its dark embrace. Sweat trickled down his back, mixing with the cold dread pooling in his gut. The light from the locket pulsed more erratically, flickering like a flame caught in a storm, and he realized with horror that its strength was waning. "Push it back," he roared, his voice barely cutting through the chaos. But the shadows churned like a dark ocean, relentless and hungry. They surged toward him, hungry jaws snapping so close he could feel their icy breath on his skin. "Please," Mark Emily's voice broke through the cacophony, crystal clear amidst the twisted screams and laughter of the ghoul. "Don't leave us. You can save us." He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting back the despair clawing at his heart. He had to focus, to remember. Hadn't he always heard tales of courage overcoming the shadows? With a swift motion, he opened his eyes, and the locket shone brighter, pulling strength from the depths of his fear. A spark of defiance ignited in his chest. "Leave them alone," he shouted, but his words mingled with the din, lost in the uproar of the dark realm around him. The shadows hissed as tendrils lashed out, striking his arms and legs, cold like winter's breath. They coiled tight, trying to bind him, drag him down. He staggered, feeling the earth beneath him shift like quicksand. "You think they're free? You think you can change what they want?" The ghoul's twisted face loomed closer, its gaping mouth filled with whispers, shaping nightmares. "They crave the darkness just like you. It's in your blood." "No," Mark growled, gritting his teeth against the fear. With a surge of energy, he thrust the locket forward, a blinding burst of light spilling from it like a fierce tide. "You don't control me," the shadows shrieked in agony, recoiling, but their desperation only fueled their rage. "You'll regret this," the ghoul roared, its voice rising above the cacophony like thunder. The ground cracked again, and the pit seemed to widen, darkness leeching up like a swarm of angry insects. With all his strength, Mark felt the tug of the locket pulling him outward, drawing away from the grasp of despair. But behind him, the children's faces melted into the swirling miasma. Their eyes filled with pleading as their forms shadowed more into the darkness. His heart pounded against his ribcage, raw desperation clawing at him. Could he reach them in time? Suddenly, clarity struck him like a whip. The darkness was a reflection, feeding off his own fears and doubts. "It's not about me," he shouted, heart racing. "It's about them." He rallied all the love he had for his sister, for the innocent lives caught in this nightmare. "I won't let you take them." He thrust the locket forward again, its light streaming toward the crumbling shadows as if commanding an army of light against an onslaught of evil. For a moment, the shadows halted, startled by his sheer will. But that moment was fleeting. The ghoul lunged, its maw snapping inches from him, the horror of melding souls threatening to engulf everything. Mark's breath gasped in his throat. He could feel the walls of despair closing in, each second a battle. Would the light be enough? Would it save them, or was it just a flicker against an eternal night? The whispers grew louder, a sorrowful symphony that echoed the tales of the well and the cursed land of Daggerlin. Each childish voice harmonizing with the darkness, weaving them deeper into its ominous spell. "Mark," cried Emily again, the only anchor in the storm. He had to act. He couldn't linger in the chasm of doubt. The locket's power surged, a connection igniting as hope battled the smothering darkness. Mark lunged forward, light spilling from the locket like molten gold. But was it enough? Would he be swallowed by the shadows, or could he harness the glow to save them all? As the darkness roared, a chilling thought pierced him. What if in saving them he would lose something far more precious? The voices melded into a scream as Mark's hands trembled, torn between the impulse to save and the weight of what would be sacrificed. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted again. A new threat trembled through the shadows. He pressed on, the light bursting forth one last time, and then silence enveloped them like a thick fog. But what would emerge from the quiet? Had he broken the veil, or had he stepped into a deeper abyss? The answer loomed closer with each heartbeat, and the shadows waited, eager to see what he would choose next. Mark stood on the edge of the abyss, heart hammering like a drum in a hollow cage. The ghoul's twisted form hung in the air, its shadow stretching, mirroring the terror coiling in his gut. The whispers of despair filled his ears, the cries of the trapped children echoing louder than ever. "You can't save us, Mark," they chorused as the shadows writhed eagerly. He couldn't let fear pull him under. Gritting his teeth, he clutched the locket, feeling its flicker of warmth pulse through him. "It's not just about me," he breathed, the words igniting a fire in his chest. This fight was for the children, Emily, and the lost souls of Daggerlin. As the ghoul lunged, darkness swelling around them, Mark took a step forward. He thrust the locket high, light bursting forth like a sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadows shrank back, hissing as if scalded. "You'll never own me," he shouted into the void, feeling the strength of his resolve anew. The light expanded, spilling its warmth across the clearing. He could see their faces more clearly now, children of whispering echoes trapped in the night, their eyes flickering with hope and fear. "Hold on," he yelled, heart racing. "Mark," Emily cried, her voice piercing the din. "Help us." Frantic energy surged through him. He had to reach them. He focused on her, picturing her smile, the way she used to laugh. With every ounce of his being, he called back, "I won't leave you." With a powerful thrust, he directed the locket's light toward the shadows, illuminating the horror around him. It cleaved through their forms, and for a moment, he felt the children closer, as if the separation was but a thin veil. The ghoul screeched, twisting and writhing, before falling back, recoiling against the light. Now is the time," Mark shouted. "Come to me." As if drawn by his words, the children shifted closer, their spectral forms coalescing into a shimmering light. He could see them reaching toward him, fingers stretching through the darkness. "Yes, you can do this," he urged, feeling strength flow through him. But the darkness retaliated, the ghoul roaring in feral rage. The shadows surged forward, a wild wave eager to reclaim their lost. But Mark stood firm, determination blasting through his fear. With a final push, he released the locket's power, sending a radiant beam slicing through the phantoms. The shadows screamed, and from that chaos emerged a soft, golden light that spiraled towards the children. It enveloped them, merging with their forms, their frightened faces shifting from despair to serene relief. "Mark," a small voice called, and he realized it was Emily, stepping through the light. "You did it. We're free." Tears pooled in his eyes, yet the ghoul roared furiously, thrashing, pushing against the combined strength of the light. "You think you can escape what is bound to you?" It spat, but Mark felt the locket pulse stronger than ever, fueled by the love he had for the children. "This is my choice," he roared back, pushing forward into the light with the force of a tidal wave. Then, the locket blazed brighter than he thought possible, swallowing every last whisper of doubt. He could feel the darkness howl, but it was too late. With an earth-shattering crack, the shadows imploded in a whirlpool of chaos, the ghoul's anguished screams melting into nothingness. The children glimmered, their faces now vibrant, flickering with newfound joy as they began to fade into the light. Mark's heart exploded with a bittersweet mixture of relief and sorrow. Emily smiled at him, her features radiant and warm. "Thank you, Mark. You're our hero." Then, like the sun rising above the horizon, they vanished, leaving nothing but a gentle glow in their wake. Breathless and drained, Mark stood alone in the clearing. The darkness that had engulfed Daggerlin receded, replaced by a quiet stillness that felt almost like a promise. He had faced the shadows and triumphed not just over them, but over his own fears. As dawn dawned, light painted the sky with rich hues of orange and pink, a stark reminder of the life returning to Daggerlin. With heavy yet relieved footsteps, he made his way back home, finally at peace with the weight of his past. This was a new beginning for him, for the community, for all the lost souls that once haunted the woods. As he crossed his threshold, a gust of wind followed him in, wrapping around him like a long-lost friend. Whispers lingered in the air, soft yet clear, filled with gratitude and love. And though he bore the scars of his battles, he could finally move forward. To you all who watched, you need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on the next exclusive tales. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now, feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this epic conclusion. And for the love of all things spooky, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us spread the word together.